Hello everyone, my name is Jocelyn, you may call me Joy, and it has recently come to my attention that the war of ideas is not going so great at the moment for people like me. In fact, we are kind of losing this war. What do I mean exactly? Well, last night, after I came home from one of the most fun gigs I've been to in a while, I checked my messages on my phone and found an article from the Telegraph. Yeah. Am I old now? Is that what we're doing now? Reading the damn Telegraph? Anyway, my phone thought that this might be something that I would be interested in, and for once, it was right. The bots are listening. So I wanted to have a look at this article on camera with you all because I think it demonstrates a couple of key things going on in this war of ideas, in this culture war. Ugh. And also it involves two fairly prominent figureheads of opposing sides. So let's get into it. Let's analyse this article, get on our media analysis hats, as it were. Although I have just coloured my hair, I'm not going to be putting an actual hat over this because it looks stunning. So what we're looking at here is J.K. Rowling. Like bashing my head against a friggin' wall with this woman. J.K. Rowling reported to police by trans activist India Willoughby for misgendering. Harry Potter author referred to newsreader and Loose Women host as a man in Twitter argument. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. J.K. Rowling has been reported to the police by trans broadcaster India Willoughby over misgendering on social media. The Harry Potter author became embroiled in an online row with India Willoughby, in which she referred to the transgender newsreader, Loose Women host, and former Big Brother contestant as a man, and with he pronouns. Also, I had no idea that India was on Loose Women as a presenter. Not that I watched Loose Women or anything, but I'm kind of surprised because I thought Loose Women was leaning towards the anti-trans side of things. So, I mean, things change. So, there's that. I don't know how well India does on the show. Maybe that's a thing to look at in the future. Willoughby, who was born male, and underwent gender reassignment surgery. Why? Why are you bringing up her surgery? In 2015, made a complaint to police over Rowling's posts on X, formerly Twitter, dead name Twitter. It's fine, go ahead. Claiming she had, quote, definitely committed a crime. Okay, so Willoughby, who was assigned male at birth, but I suppose born male is better than saying is a man, because, you know, she's not. It doesn't matter when she underwent gender reassignment surgery. Surgery is not what makes someone a woman. For more definitive and conclusive arguments about what is a woman, I have already made videos about that, and I'm not about to rehash that now because it's not the point of this video. The broadcaster, who holds a gender recognition certificate, claimed to be legally a woman. This. First of all, the wording claimed. She's she is legally a woman. She has a gender recognition certificate. But why do you gotta put the word claim in there? And get the inverted commas again. Like, is that because this is a quote? Or is that because they want to distance India from womanhood? This is the Telegraph, remember, and it is showing its bias. Although Rowling pointed out there was no law which compelled her to pretend that Willoughby was a woman. It's not pretense, it's acknowledgement of a fact. However, Rowling is correct here. There is no law that compels a person to hold a particular belief. That would be unethical. Something else I feel very necessary to say is that, yes, while J.K. Rowling is not compelled to hold any specific belief, she was also not compelled to be a hateful, ignorant bitch online. Northumbria Police confirmed that it had received a complaint and said it was waiting to speak to Willoughby further. It's been a couple of days since I recorded my main bulk of this video, and a couple of thoughts still remained in my head, so I have to supplement that with these thoughts now. First of all, I forgot to mention what I do know about India and J.K. Rowling in terms of their media history, in terms of their conversations. Again, that kind of feels like a bit too soft of a word to use. Let's say their online interactions with each other. So in a previous video, I actually did highlight a tweet that India had posted saying that she had been approached by a television company to go to places with J.K. Rowling, to specifically places that have been points of contention for gender critical people, such as women's spas, women's locker rooms, those kinds of things. Obviously, I think there's something a bit weird about a TV crew filming in those spaces, but the idea was that they were to spend a week together, and Rowling was the one who declined. Downing Street declined to comment on the specifics of the dispute, but pointed to comments from Rishi Sunak in which the Prime Minister said definitions of men and women should not be controversial. First of all, why on earth is Downing Street involved in this? I think we know why. It's the culture war thing. What I mean when I say culture war is that things that are happening in discourse between people, mostly online, but also on television and other media sources and everything like that, these thoughts are transferring up into government. And that's where it becomes a real issue, a real problem for us, the trans people, because these people in government are legislating about our lives without our say-so, without our consultation, without our input. Who's in charge at the moment is the Conservative Party, led by Rishi Sunak, who is transphobic. I'm willing to say that he is categorically transphobic. He has said transphobic things, and unless he changes, does a U-turn sort of thing, then I'm willing to say, like, with essentialism, Rishi Sunak is a transphobe. Similarly, I'm going to say the same for Kemi Badenoch and Suella Braverman, who is sort of disgraced in the Tory party at the moment. So, haha. But also she's still a big, prominent figurehead in the sort of political media at the moment. So what Rishi and essentially the Conservative Party line is talking about in that line is that he's saying that it shouldn't be controversial to define a man and a woman. Okay, well, how would he define a man and a woman? I think we know the answer to that as well. He's going to say it's to do with what's in someone's pants when they were born. Kind of ignoring that some people have ambiguous genitalia when they are born and they are intersex. Kind of ignoring that not just man and woman, but also like male and female. These terms biologically are not cut and dry. They are composed of cluster properties. Someone who has more properties of maleness, i.e. the type of gonads they have, the type of chromosomes they have, the type of genitals they have, the type of secondary sex characteristics they develop in puberty. All of these things determine how we see someone as either a man or a woman. It really is the case that we just sort of generalize when it comes to this sort of thing, rather than there being absolutes on both sides. It's why, we're supposed to look past basic biology. We're supposed to look into advanced biology when we become adults. And if one is not prepared to do that, one should not be governing and making decisions on how other people's genders are and how these people, my people, live our lives. But let's continue with the article. In October, the Prime Minister said it shouldn't be controversial to ensure parents were informed about what children were being taught regarding sex relationships at school. Again, it's couched in language that doesn't sound objectionable. This is part of the trick. This is how they are worming their nasty little transphobic agenda in dog-whistled language. Yes, parents should absolutely know what children are being taught in schools. That is, again, not a controversial thing to say. That is something that a lot of parents, a lot of people can agree with on its surface. But he then goes on to say he insisted it was common sense to say that a man is a man and a woman is a woman. Again, this is really talking at cross purposes, because when I say someone is a man and when a transphobe says someone is a man, we might be talking about two different kinds of people. When I say someone is a man, I'm referring to someone identifying themselves as a man based on what's going on up here, based on their psychology, their lived experience. And I trust that they know what is best for them, because I want people to trust that I know what is best for me in terms of how I identify myself, how I live my life, how I see myself, how other people see me. Again, in my own personal life, it shouldn't even be a thing that's part of the government's agenda. This is one of those instances when we want the government to stay the hell away from our lives. Just let us live our lives and make sure that we have safety and access to the things we want. The things we need in order to make ourselves feel the same level of discomfort, angst, anxiety, anguish, any other A word there are, asshole-ish, as every other human being. Okay? So what Rishi is saying when he says common sense, again, is kind of an appeal to people's basic knowledge rather than like learned years of study, I would happily trust someone like Judith Butler, who has done lots and lots of research and, you know, over many, many years, written lots of books, studied the topic of gender and gender norms and gender roles and gender disparity in society. I would trust her to know what she's talking about. Why would I trust a politician to do the same when I don't trust politicians to know much about anything? It's not like they can run a decent economy. It's not like they've kept the health system afloat. It's not like they were responsible enough when it came to the issue of the pandemic. You know, I completely did not trust them with those issues, and I'm not trusting them with this either. Because they're not experts, and they're not deferring to experts either. But back to the two main figureheads. Rowling, who has regularly spoken out on the issue of gender identity. The issue of gender identity. Okay, stop and pause there. My God. Gender identity is not and was not an issue until people like JK started making it an issue. Refused to refer to Willoughby as a woman in an online debate about all-female locker rooms. She said that, should she be approached by the police, she would explain that, in my view, India is a classic example of the male narcissist who lives in a state of perpetual rage that he can't compel women to take him at his own valuation. Sorry about misgendering India. I obviously know that she is a woman. I am just reading this and it is clunky to try and, like, overcorrect. She's well and truly bought into the gender critical narrative that trans women are... God, I'm going to have to say it, aren't I? Autogynephilic. For those of you who are unfamiliar with that term, autogynephilia is kind of a made-up term from like pseudo-Greek words that basically means that based on one stupid discredited study that does not hold water at all by a man named Ray Blanchard, he coined the term to describe trans women who find themselves sexy as women. However, he went further than that and pathologized this. He made it seem like trans women are narcissistically self-loving, but only as women, which, when a woman puts on lingerie and sees herself as sexy, is that narcissistic? I would say no, not necessarily. So when a trans woman does the same as a cis woman wearing lingerie, it's not narcissism. India is also a person who, from what I have seen in interviews and things like that, is not in a state of perpetual rage. I'm thinking this is projection from J.K. Rowling. She's the one that is so full of hate that she has to spill it out into the pages and pages of her to use my own inverted commas, novels and posts on the artist formerly known as Twitter. I would also like to point out that in her own words, in her own transphobic essay, J.K. Rowling said the following: that she loved and respected many trans people and would treat them with dignity and support them and march with them if they're being oppressed, which that if was an insult all by itself. But now we're seeing how much she actually meant that. The whole issue about freedom of speech, it's often taken to extremes when it comes to trans people. Because we say we are one thing, somebody else says we are a different thing. Depending on how severely they are saying it, it does kind of border on hate crime territory. And it depends on context. It depends on how strongly that person is saying it, how violently that person is saying it, how often that person is saying it, all of these things. He craves publicity. She said, "Some time ago, lawyers advised me that not only did I have a clearly winnable case against India Willoughby for defamation, but that India's obsessive targeting of me over the past few years may meet the legal threshold for harassment. I ignored this advice because I couldn't be bothered giving India the publicity he so clearly deserves." Again, she's misgendering India out of disrespect. It's just disrespect at this point. And trying to get away with it with the whole freedom of speech angle. Now, India has, as far as I'm aware, not harassed J.K. Rowling. It appears to have slipped what passes for India's mind. Excuse me, what? Did you have to be rude about this? That he's previously called a fellow trans woman a man on this very site. If this is true, then yeah, okay, India was in the wrong for doing that. Surprisingly, for such an eminent legal authority, he appears to have forgotten that the for-starter ruling established that gender-critical views can be protected in law as a philosophical belief. No law compels anyone to pretend to believe that India is a woman. Right. For-starter and J.K. Rowling are pretty close now, so of course there's a bias there. Maya Forstater successfully brought a case to the Employment Appeal Tribunal in 2021 to establish that gender-critical views are a protected philosophical belief under the Equality Act of 2010. This is extremely fucking dangerous for us trans people. We are the ones who are supposed to be protected under the Equality Act of 2010. First of all, you don't have to pretend to believe that India is a woman because India is a woman. Second of all, if you disagree with that, then yes, there is no law that compels you to state otherwise. I think what India is doing here is trying to build publicity to make people see the issue. And that is that people who are misgendering other people deliberately, maliciously, and intently can just get away with it, which is wrong, is immoral. Maya Forstater's case was built on a lie. She was not fired from her job because of her gender-critical beliefs. Her contract, which was up for renewal, the employers decided to not renew because of her gender-critical beliefs. Because she was deliberately, intently, and maliciously saying transphobic things to a co-worker whom the employers were protecting in both dignity and rights from Maya. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that the people that we're talking about in this video, Maya Forstater and J.K. Rowling, were not against trans people. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, they are against people of colour. Let's say that they are trying to protect their freedom of philosophical beliefs about people of colour. let's say, for the sake of argument, that they think that those people are inferior or delusional about who they are, what they are, how they can behave, what they are allowed to do. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that they're trying to protect their so-called right to hate speech against people of colour. Is that acceptable in any way? Should that be legally protected in any way? Or is that seen as violent hate speech? And you might say that's a bit too extreme of an example because trans people and people of colour are not the same. And okay, I will agree with you there, like, except in the cases where they are the same because of intersectionality. But again, that's not the point here. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that they said bad things about gay people and lesbians. Let's say that other members of the queer community were somehow inferior or delusional or just not who they say they are, not who they know themselves to be. Should that be protected by law? Should that be acceptable legally? Or is it quite clear that the, victim in that scenario would be the person who is being targeted by them? So not only do we have a media bias against trans people, we also have a legal bias against trans people, as well as the aforementioned political bias against trans people. Do you start to see where the issue is for trans people? Misgendering, not criminal. Legal commentators accused Willoughby of misunderstanding English law as, while hostility to someone based on gender identity can be an aggravating factor if a separate crime is committed, misgendering was not in itself a criminal offence. Again, this is technically true. We trans people do not have a lot of legal recourse to fall back on. That's a bit of an issue. Because it does mean that people like J.K. Rowling can push the bullying further and further and further and not get any recrimination until what point? Until somebody else dies? Like, then what? Then what happens is, although those killers might be found guilty and shamed, the Prime Minister is still going to say some shitty things about their corpse to their mother in the same room. There's a little bit extra here I'm going to skip past because it's sort of not related. But skip to the end. It says that Willoughby claimed to have been targeted by other accounts with some of the worst abuse I've ever seen on social media as a result of Rowling's trigger. This is the real issue. Because Rowling is such a high-profile figure in the gender-critical movement, India says, hey, this thing that you did is not okay. J.K. Rowling says, well, it's not illegal. And then J.K.'s followers dogpile on India. And again, India is the one who's the victim in all this. Because, first of all, she's been misgendered, then she's been getting abuse on social media. Something that I think J.K. Rowling would empathise with if she had a fucking brain cell. The 58-year-old claimed to have contacted Northumbria Constabulary and said, I don't know if it's going to be treated as a hate crime, malicious communications, but it's a cut and dry offence as far as I'm concerned. First of all, I want to say India Willoughby is 58 years old. She looks fantastic. Where do you draw the line between hate speech and free speech? She calls it a crime. She says it's malicious. I haven't seen the hate, so again, I don't use Twitter. I'm not prepared to fucking start now. I'm not going to go into investigative detail about what is going on with Elon Musk's platform. No. But I think what's happening is that she is doing this to try to bring the issue to light about how little trans people's views are valued in the legal, political, and media spheres. A spokesman for Northumbria Police said, "On Monday, March the 4th, we received a complaint about a post on social media. We are currently waiting to speak to the complainant further." A Downing Street spokesman declined to comment on individuals or cases and said it would be up to police how to respond. He added, "More generally, the Prime Minister has spoken about definitions, that those should not be controversial." Okay, that's the end of the article. On the one hand, I do think that people should be allowed the freedom to say what they believe and everything. On the other hand, I see that this is clearly harassment. This is clearly targeted, offensive behaviour towards India from J.K. Rowling. Because J.K. Rowling not only has a large platform but also a large following, that is now turning into harassment for India. The fact that Downing Street is even mentioned in this is ludicrous. Like, yes, government tells people what the laws are because they make the laws, and then police enforces the laws. Okay, I get that, but the only reason that Downing Street was even mentioned is the fact that Rishi Sunak is a transphobe, is making transphobic rhetoric, like feeding that the whole time, and it's tiring living here. And before anyone says, well, if you hate living in the UK so much, why don't you move? I cannot even legally get a fucking passport because the government is so transphobic. There are other reasons as well, but that is like one of the main issues I have. Weaselly language coming from Downing Street as well is not unexpected at all. Saying that definitions are not controversial and common sense are not answering the question, because they know that some of their constituents will be on board with trans rights. I don't see how or why, but you get trans conservatives. I don't fathom how that works in their brains, but you do get them. I think the government is reluctant to openly admit how downright fascist they want to be when it comes to the issue of trans people. Hence the need for the cloaked language. An art which has completely vanished in the US. What they really want to say is that it's basic biology. And as I have pointed out, biology just isn't that basic or simple. It's not black and white. It's not cut and dry. Biology itself is messy. And then gender on top of that, you know, the psychological state of someone's being is not necessarily tied to biology. Anyway, I've had enough of this. I really have. I don't want to talk about JK anymore, but she refuses to just stay stumm, which, again, she kind of has the right to do, but I just wish she would get a clue first. Anyway, until next time, non-binary is valid, goddammit. See you all soon. Bye. This is going to be an absolute hilarious video to edit.